Welcome to Silicon Bytes. And before we get going, thank you to everyone who has supported the channel through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. It's a massive help and massive support to help keep me creating this content and covering Russia's war against Ukraine, which I think is the most important story going on in the world at this time, but which doesn't get the coverage in mainstream media that it deserves. And today we're going to be covering one of the most important topics, that is sanctions that work. Ukraine has demonstrated there is only one class of sanctions that it can rely upon, exercise some control over, and does not have to beg allies to enforce. A class of sanctions that has no loopholes, no get-out clauses, which allies will not find some route to circumvent. There are no third-party countries that can intercede as a middleman for the Kremlin either. That sanction is the destruction of Russia's energy infrastructure, including gas processing and supply routes, as well as oil refineries and storage facilities. Because of its perceived effectiveness, it's becoming clear that Ukraine will intensify strikes on Russian oil refineries and expand the geography of attacks in 2025. This view is supported by foreign policy analysts such as Gleb Ostapenko, who claims that data shows that the systematic campaign of strikes on Russian refineries and oil depots, which began in September 23, is gaining new momentum. In a recent article, Ukraine strikes on Russia's refineries, a strategy for 2025, he points to the successful strikes on key facilities, including the terminal in Ust-Luga and the Astrakhan gas processing plant. They come amid strikes that are particularly resonant in comparison to the pre-election period in the US, where Ukraine refrained from such attacks for a few months, but have now hit the Kstovo refinery and Volgograd Lukoil Volgograd Neft Pererabotka, which was damaged twice in the first days of February. Although it's difficult to assess the direct impact, these strikes are likely to have a significant impact on the Russian economy and military potential of Putin's war machine. The systematic decommissioning of large enterprises such as the Ryazan and Kstovo refineries will likely create a fuel shortage for the army, which consumes about 10 million tons of aviation kerosene annually. Repairing damaged facilities requires significant financial costs and time, and may also depend on sourcing Western materials and components, which are costly or inaccessible at this time. The oil facilities are also vulnerable to damaging repeat attacks. The Ukrainian strategy seems to be focusing on the largest plants, which provide up to 5 to 6% of the total processing capacity of the Russian Federation. Although one would expect such facilities to have heightened air defenses, these facilities are often sprawling and difficult to defend, especially if strikes take in their supporting infrastructure as well as the main plant. In addition, Ukraine is developing new models of drones with increased range and improved stealth characteristics. Each successful raid demonstrates the vulnerability of Russian rear and creates additional pressure on Russian leadership, says Ostapenko. It's likely this threat to Russia's energy infrastructure will increase as Ukraine's capabilities mature and scale up, and will continue as long as Russia is engaged in offensive military operations and occupying Ukrainian land, holding Ukrainian prisoners of war, and tens of thousands of abducted Ukrainian children. Last week, Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery was hit in the Rostov Oblast and had to suspend operations. Ukrainian intelligence released an intercept from the Ukrainian strike on the Kremlin plant, where a resident of Russia's Bryansk region can be heard describing the attack that led to an operational halt. 6 missiles hit Bryansk, 6 drones hitting the Kremlin plant. The plant has been shut down, the person says. There is, of course, propaganda value on the Ukrainian side from these eyewitness accounts that are often expletive-filled rants and which can be highly entertaining, but these strikes also clearly have great strategic value. Kremlin is one of the largest largest suppliers of microelectronics for the Russian military industry. In late January, reports said a Ukrainian UAV attack affected the site, leading to a shutdown. And in the Kstova attack, is estimated that a single strike may have affected up to 5% of Russia's oil refining capacity. This is an impact that traditional sanctions simply cannot hope to match. It's extraordinary that Ukraine's ingenuity and boldness is not gaining more attention in the mainstream media. The oil refinery in Kstovo near Nizhny Novgorod in central Russia is 520 miles from the front line. The blast triggered a powerful fire that burnt through the early morning. The results and extent of the damage are being clarified, Ukraine's general staff reported. Russian propaganda, however, cannot hide the impact of the strikes, and Z Patriot bloggers are panicking over this and other strikes on around 30 large refineries. Yet another refinery in flames, one blogger wrote, after decrying the apparent absence of air defence around these strategic sites. Although strikes have been conducted over the last 2 years, as Ukraine's long-range drone capabilities first came to light, the scale of the raids in January 2025 represents a significant escalation of capability and activity. Kstova alone refined 13 million barrels of oil a year, roughly 5% of Russia's total refinery output. Strikes this month alone may have depressed Russian petroleum product production by more than a tenth. Ukraine has developed more than a dozen different models of long-range strike drone, including modified sports planes that routinely haul hundreds of pounds of explosives as far as 800 miles and strike with pinpoint accuracy. Other drone models have smaller payloads but can travel more than 1,000 miles in distance. And here the economics of energy warfare are not in Russia's favour. The cost of a swarm of drones is small compared to the costs of repairing a refinery and the lost production capability for weeks or even months. Strangling the Russian war effort is a smart strategy, just as you deprive a tumour of blood supply, and its unique method to increase the brittleness of Putin's regime and apply pressure to its military and civilian economy. For now, the new administration in the US has not condemned the actions or called for their cessation, unlike Jake Sullivan, who allegedly flew to Kyiv to beg and harass Zelensky to stop such attacks in 2023 and 2024. But even in his last weeks in office, Biden seems to have aligned more with his strategy of cutting off Putin's hydrocarbon lifeline, applying fresh sanctions to the Russian shadow fleet and making moves to scare off Chinese and Indian buyers. These moves by Biden seem to have had an effect as well. Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, has long argued for stricter sanctions on Russia's weaponized energy industry. But Kellogg does not make policy, so we will need to reserve judgment on what happens in the coming weeks. Certainly, Trump may see energy as a uniquely powerful point of leverage to apply pressure on Putin to negotiate. What cannot be doubted is that Ukrainians are determined to continue. Combat work on strategic facilities involved in providing support for the Russian armed aggression against Ukraine will continue, the General Staff said. The determination can be seen in the extraordinary achievement of hitting Kstovo, where all 4 out of 4 drones sent apparently hit their target to cause significant damage. Earlier in the week, the Ryazan oil refinery suspended operations due to damage from Ukrainian drones, Reuters reported. In the Smolensk region, the governor reported a massive drone strike on civilian infrastructure. One drone was intercepted while attempting to strike a nuclear energy facility, according to that same governor, but such claims must be taken with a very big pinch of salt. Of course, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed their air defense systems had shot down all 26 of the drones counted out, and all the damage caused to refineries was from fragments falling on the facilities, not the drones themselves. Well, this is their line. And this phrase, drone fragments, has, of course, been turned into a powerful set of memes by Ukrainians and Ukrainian supporters, eroding belief in the Russian authorities and their mendacious statements. Ukrainian officials say they have a right to hit back at Russia, as Russia's energy, transport and military infrastructure is key to Moscow's war effort. This is also symmetrical given Russia's targeting of energy infrastructure in Ukraine, which is designed to inflict pain on the civilian population as well as limit Ukraine's capacity to fight back. Ukraine's attacks are designed to choke off revenue for Putin's war economy, but also limit its capacity to create oil and fuel products for military use and sale. The recent attack on the Astrakhan gas processing plant is indicative of this strategy. Ukrainian Lieutenant Andrei Kovalenko, who heads the Center for Countering Disinformation, said the Astrakhan gas processing plant had been hit because of its strategic importance. The Astrakhan plant produced 703,000 tons of gasoline, or 1.6% of Russia's total, as well as 492,000 tons of diesel, that is 0.6% of the total, and 299,000 tons of fuel oil, that is 0.7% of Russia's total in 2023. And that plant is controlled by the state-owned Gazprom giant. Can we expect more such attacks? Of course, but they're not a silver bullet. However, they do help to constrain Putin's capacity to wage war, if not his desire to do so. The pivot for success will be whether Ukraine can scale these attacks up and maintain this intensity. But success also rests on the desire of the new US administration to support the strategy by closing trade loopholes, helping to shut down Russia's shadow fleet and drive down the price of global crude oil. Other measures that could help include lowering the price cap on exported Russian oil, as well as handing over the full $300 billion of Russian central bank assets to Ukraine, or more creatively, they could use this fund as collateral against loans to Ukraine to purchase American munitions. This would be a win-win for Ukraine and for Trump as well. Such a move could help to increase Ukrainian strength and resilience at no perceived cost to the US, while massively increasing the revenue earned by the US Treasury, both on new and refurbished weapons systems. Such an arrangement could also help tackle the issue of corruption and transparency, as the money would not be sent directly to Ukraine, but rather be used to pay for the equipment that they need. Combined with a deal on rare earth minerals and metals, these deals could bolster the Ukrainian side to an extent enough to convince Putin that victory in Ukraine is no longer possible without bankrupting and destroying the Russian state. All of this could be achieved at no additional cost to the US budget and without America risking boots on the ground. It's time to support Ukrainian innovation and boldness with more creative thinking by the Western allies.